Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Tim Schuler. Tim is the president and COO at Detroit Edible Company and Cannalicious Labs, a cannabis manufacturing company. Tim has experience in sales over multiple industries from sports, entertainment, alcohol, and now cannabis. Tim, thank you for joining me today at Start the Ladder.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Tim, I like to start every interview the exact same way by asking, can you explain what it is you do as if you're speaking to a 6-year-old?
Well, it's easy to do because I deal with a lot of people on a daily basis, and they do want to know what I do. I own and run a company that manufactures cannabis products, and I provide, in my role, guidance, strategy, and enthusiasm to the 65 employees that we have that sells cannabis products throughout the state of Michigan.
Incredible. Tim, this is going to be kind of a broad question, and I'm sure it's going to kind of be difficult to outline all of it. But if you could give me a quick overview, how has your career path led you to the position you're in today?
One of the things my mentor pushed me to do was to get my MBA. And sadly, I never did receive my MBA, but I did work for, in my opinion, one of the best sales, marketing, and distribution companies that has ever been created, and that was Anheuser-Busch. And having worked there for 15 years with employee employees and teammates that literally push and drive you to be better and understand how it implicates across a broad spectrum of things. It truly did root me in the ability to figure out how to make a company run. Um, I started this company when I was 52, 7 years into it, and we're on the right path. But it's one of those things where you learn everything along the way of how to actually implement it once you're going to be at the top of that pyramid.
Without a doubt. You touched on there the advice you got to get your MBA. Obviously, you said, as you said, you didn't get it. What was another piece of advice, or maybe some other key pieces of advice that led you to have the success, whether it was throughout your career prior to starting your own company, or that you're kind of coming back to now and kind of hearing it in your head all these years later?
Yeah, it's not to be mistook or anything, but the treat others how you would want to be treated is probably the best proverb that's ever been out there. Being able to treat whether it's the janitor of the company, the sales rep, the secretary, the CEO, the exact same way, because you never know when that influence will assist you or help you in any way, shape, or form. The aspect of, wanting to do something for others and help them become successful actually leads to your own success. And many people discover it probably later in life versus early in life, but lending a hand and saying, how can I help you? And not just how can I help you, but tell me about one of the problems, one of your things that scratches at you every day, and then figuring out a solution for that individual. They'll be indebted to you for a long, long time.
Yeah. It's funny how I've been doing a couple of these interviews, and I think a key point I keep hearing is just emphasis on helping others. And I'm seeing it myself as I reach out to people, like yourself, and I kind of, ask for 30 minutes of time, ask for a bit of help, the willingness of others to help, and that by giving, it's not what you take out, it's what you give in, and you get that back. And I think that's becoming more and more evident. And I don't think the simplicity of it is undermined, but it's so real in today's world.
It is pretty simple. And, if you define success as, you know, helping others, it helps get you there a lot quicker.
Yeah. Tim, I think, you touched on some lessons you've learned and advice you've gotten. I think one of the greatest ways we learn, and sadly it comes from our failures, right? Mistakes we make throughout the way is one of the best ways we learn. What was a key mistake either you made, in this company or prior to in your career that taught you the biggest lesson and led to success down the road?
That's a great question. And with all humility, I thought I could do it all. And when you learn very quickly that you can't do it all, and you have to rely and trust in others to do what you want and have them see the same vision you have, you can accomplish so much more. And it was clearly evident probably 30 years ago when I worked in Topeka, Kansas, of all places, that I wanted to do it all. And my mentor said, "Hey, dude, you need to let other people help you." And when I did that, I started to realize how much more I could accomplish if I gave up responsibility to be able to accomplish things.
Yeah. I think this next question may not be specific to the world, the industry of cannabis or cannabis manufacturing. It might just be more broad in terms of the business world. But what are the traits in people you have seen, either it be mentors or, coworkers or people you've hired? What are the traits you've seen in people that have led them to great success?
I think the number one trait an individual can have is, do you want to go have lunch with them? And that results in their personality and how they handle conversation. I always say that people have to be interested and interesting, and interested 75% and interesting 25%. So that interesting means your ability to carry a conversation, but then interested to be able to say, how did you get there? What did you do? I have a problem. How do I get there? Like, being able to ask questions and be curious is the number one, I think, trait that an individual can have, because if they are curious and they are interested, that'll lead to, how do I figure it out and how do I be better at what I do and how I interact with other people. And that could be for a sales rep, an engineer, an accounting person, a data storage, data analytic, any type of role. If you're curious and you want to have that thirst and knowledge, you'll actually get around to figuring something out and how to become better at what you're doing.
Yeah. I think one, some sort of proverb or quote, maybe it was, I heard once was, you you only know your own world, everybody else knows the rest of the world, and you're limiting yourself by only being interested in your own world. You miss out on the
Yes,
rest of it. And I think it's a key thing that whether it be in the business world or just in life in general, I'm working at a bar now, and it's, a lot of old timers come in, and the more I ask them questions about their lives that I would never want to live, some of them that, I never want to go down the path they went. But there's a
sure.
lesson or there's a story in there that I would have never heard had I not asked or been curious, as you said.
Yeah. And there's something to learn from everyone. We all go through life having various managers, bosses, whatever you want to call that individual. I tell all of our kids, there's six of them out there, that you'll learn from every boss. And some of those bosses will teach you lessons that you won't want to repeat. And other bosses will teach you lessons you will want to repeat. And so you look at every opportunity, and most people have a boss from anywhere from 1 to 3 years. I always think of that as, your time in college goes so quickly. You're a senior in college right now. It was yesterday you were a senior in high school, right? Like, you can put up and deal with any type of individual. It's learning what they do and how they do it that can make you the better person down the road, as long as you're feeling that same thing. How would I do this if I were in his shoes or her shoes?
Yeah. You touched on a lot there, kind of, I guess you could call them the soft skills, is what they're often referred to, kind of those, those people skills that if you look at the world of, whether it is trying to start your own company or maybe more towards the sales world, what are the tangible skills that a college student should really be working on prior to that graduation date that will, stand to them years to come?
A lot of people want to hire athletes when they come out of college, because an athlete not only learn the things that they're supposed to be learning while at school, but they're also being critiqued and judged and managed along the way. And many people go through their 4 years of college, or 5 years, or 7 years, how many years they choose to be at a university, but they never get to know their professors. And the first thing I would tell people is, one, sit in the front of the classroom, because 90% of all the A's are given to the first two rows. Secondly, get to know them. All professors, teachers at every level got into the profession not for the money, not for the pension, but to help students. And the better relationships you can develop with those professors, one, the more you'll learn, and two, the more you'll retain. And I think that's the biggest miss that many people meet or many people miss in their university days is every professor has, open hours. Go in there and take advantage of getting to meet them, because meeting with that professor is going to be much like meeting with a boss or a manager down the road. And learn to be critiqued, learn to take criticism the right way, and improve upon what they have to provide to you.
Yeah. Tim, I want to transition you into kind of touching on, your industry of cannabis, right? I think it's talked about a lot in the news today. I think it's becoming more and more popular, as I'm sure your companies are seeing um, every day. What are the pivotal changes that are really affecting the world of cannabis now?
Um, so I equate cannabis today much like alcohol would have been in the 1940s, 7 years past prohibition. And, cannabis has been in prohibition for over 100 years here in the States. Um, and 37 states now have it as either adult use or medical use in some way. So a majority of the United States is now accepting of cannabis. But there's still a stigma out there that I'm a child product of the 80s. Nancy Reagan say no to drugs. Marijuana is a gateway drug. So a lot of people have that concept or thought premise right now. But in reality, it's healthier for you. It's better for you. When you get to be my age, aches, pains, not being able to sleep at night, cannabis provides an outstanding release for that, and it doesn't affect the body like alcohol would. And we're still in that, call it that 6 to 8 year phase past prohibition of people trying to identify whether it's an okay thing or is this going to be around for a long time. I do believe it'll be around for a long time. There's many, many medical benefits that come from it, as well as not nearly as degrading to the health of your body, or even, you know, ask any policeman how many times they've been called to a domestic disturbance. Most of the time, it has to do with alcohol or hardcore drugs. It's never cannabis. And that would be the one aspect that if people stopped and took a step back and said, okay, what is it really doing to people? It's providing an outlet for pain relief, sleep, or just euphoria. That's not going to be addictive. Um, and it will allow the individual to escape.
Yeah. It's crazy how just because of, whether it be media or, as like you said, kind of that learning it from our parents, something can, like alcohol is completely normalized while its
Yes.
problems are just completely ignored, or the same thing with opioids, that's had much, much greater damage and will continue to have much greater damage than, cannabis has ever done. With,
Yeah.
you obviously said it's growing and will continue to grow. I predict that the job market is growing as well. What other changes are you seeing specifically for the post grad or college graduate student for that job market within the world of cannabis? What are you seeing in that regard?
Um, it's wide open for people that want to learn and become true entrepreneurs, because the landscape is still changing. There used to be two ways to ingest cannabis: smoke it or put it in a brownie. And now there's literally hundreds of ways to do it. And there's more and more coming as we speak today. Gummies are the number one edible out there, but that doesn't mean that chocolates and drinks and honey and peanut butter and fudge, all of these other different ways to have it as a vehicle to ingest and enjoy, as well as have a different effect. You could drink a 5 milligram THC drink and it be as effective as a 5 milligram gummy. And then it comes down to the consumer and how do they want it. What do chefs do in terms of cooking with it? There's a lot of different ways that consumption can happen. And for that job market, it's wide open to uh, innovation on that side as well as extraction. So one of the things we do at Cannalicious is we take in the raw plant and we extract the resin out of that plant. And we do it through two different ways, either hydrocarbon extraction or ethanol washing. And then we get down to the root, not the root, but the actual concentrate that comes out of it, and we either make a distillate out of it, which we can inject into edibles, or we can take it into live resin or wax or butter, shatter, sugar, so many different things that um, allow us to reach the consumer how they want to be reached. So that's the job market there. It's all of the different, data analytics. Like people that used to sell cannabis 6 years ago, they never looked at data. Now there's so many different platforms that will analyze the data that is coming in and how do you use that at retail. Very similar to shelf space for any other cereal category, the soup category. Well, now it's going to be the cannabis category. So there's a wide breadth of career opportunities within cannabis if somebody wants to get into it.
I think a lot of the roles you just touched on, people may think of, maybe 10 years ago that was tech, or, maybe it was manufacturing before that, where it was
Sure.
this wide range of different ways you could go with a career within one industry. You look at it now, I think cannabis is that new thing where anybody could get into it, right? Whether you're a salesperson, an engineer, a software engineer, as you said, a data analyst, there's as you said, a wide berth of different ways you could go down it. Whereas, I think it's thought of as, oh, that's not something I'm interested in. Well, maybe the specific plant might not be, but maybe the actual science behind something like that is, or maybe the software engineer is interested in, that side of things. I think it's a very incredible to see the growth and the wide range of careers, or of, I guess, degrees you guys are touching.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 65 employees and we've hired data, marketing, chemical engineer from Michigan Tech, brought a industrial engineer up from Houston, and then an electrical engineer that runs our facility, our controllers, a CPA from Michigan State. Like we have all of these different really, really good talents that come from a lot of different areas that need to make our company much, much stronger.
Yeah. You touched on the entrepreneurship of, obviously yourself with this new company and the overall entrepreneurship within the industry of cannabis. How do you see the kind of the difference in, or what advice, I guess, would you give to someone who is, wants to take that entrepreneurship route? Whether it is, they want to join a startup and kind of work with people who are starting their own company, or they themselves want to start their own company. What would be the advice you'd give to someone like that?
Be ready to grind because people who want to be an entrepreneur, they don't get to have the creature comforts that their friends are having because they go out and get a job that pays them 80 grand a year. It's the ability to separate and go, you know what? I'm going to work 14, 18 hours a day and I'm not going to have the creature comforts. I'm not going to get to go to concerts and vacations and bachelor party or bachelorette parties. It is a grind. And when you are in it, you need to be in it as deep as you can get because that's how true change and evolution happens. It's not going to happen between 8 and 5. It literally is something that you have to really truly embrace and live. And most entrepreneurs will say an overnight success took 15 or 20 years. And it literally is true that way. Entrepreneurs, and there are some lucky stories out there that they create a app and 8 weeks later they're a millionaire. That's not an entrepreneur. That's a lucky person.
As you look at, you touched on there how to succeed as an entrepreneur, taking it back a step and saying, maybe it's a college student like myself, maybe it's someone who's a couple years out of college. Who is the person who should look in the mirror and say, I should step away from this 9 to 5 job and really should take that risk, versus who is the person who should go, hey, I don't have the traits, I don't have the stuff for this, I should stick with this paycheck. What's the difference in that line there to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you could identify it, it would be like, scouting for the NFL draft. You can say, oh, that middle linebacker needs to be 6'3" and 240 pounds. Well, how did London Fletcher lead the league in tackles at 5'9"? You know, how do you open up that heart and decide what does that person have? I think it's the hardest thing of evaluating talent as well as identifying what is the traits of a good entrepreneur. First of all, I think they have to be 100% committed to wanting to be it. Secondly, They have to be really curious. They have to surround themselves with people and not be afraid of asking for help. And like what you're doing with Start the Ladder, asking for help. How did you get your start? What did you do? And then the last thing you have to have is a ton of courage to jump off and be able to say, I want to jump off. And I may be escaping, like what I just talked about, those creature comforts in life. You might be wearing the same blue jeans and a t-shirt for the next 6 years and figuring out how to get there. I've read plenty of biographies in my life about successful people. It was never handed to them. They worked really freaking hard and they surrounded themselves with good people. And that's the big difference, is how do you meld those two things together to become a true entrepreneur? Everybody says they want to be an entrepreneur, but less than 2% of the world is. Most of the people will follow, and leaders lead, and leadership is 24/7. It doesn't sleep, doesn't take a break. I'm constantly thinking, how can I serve those 64 people who work for me better so that they want to continue on this journey with me? And that's what I call it all the time is, we're on a journey. I'm not sure where the destination is, but this is where we're going. And we want you on this, caravan.
Tim, some great advice, and I thank you so much for your time. If I could ask you one final question, and I think this is going to be easy for you, like you said, you have 6 kids and all went through college. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self looking back now?
20-year-old self. So if I go back to 1986, um, I would tell Tim to make sure that he surrounds himself with great people. And thankfully, I think I did that along the way. But if I would have done it sooner and started doing things like what you're doing, is asking for advice of people who have gone through it, I would want to be more curious and ask more questions. Because I think what I experienced brought me to this level of success at 59. Could I have done that at 39? And could have I sped that process up? But then there's work life balance. There's, things that happen in life that, derail you at times. But I think literally learning how to be curious and how to serve others at an earlier stage in life would have helped me succeed quicker.
Tim, thank you so much.
Hey, best of luck to you, Alex. I love what you're doing. It's a great way to learn yourself as well as help others along the way.
Thanks.